Welcome to Dear Tay, You Got This. This podcast is a weekly motivational love letter to those who are looking for a change, are currently going through a change, and they need just a little pick-me-up. Tay is a transformation and spiritual coach and author who understands that one small habit over 1 year can create a lifetime of growth. First, we will talk about our topic, and at the end of each episode, I will do a trinity. The trinity is a brag, gratitude, and desire. If you'd like to share your wins, questions, and trinity, please call or text 330-552-7234 to be featured on the podcast. I love hearing about your success and how you are transforming. To learn more about your host, visit her Instagram page, Phoenix of Change. In 2022, I decided that I wanted to be more consistent in my business. And one of the ways that I thought to do that was to grow my TikTok following. Now, at the time, I was making videos, but I didn't feel like they were reaching the audience that I was looking for. So what did I do? I needed to have a catch. So my catch was doing sock videos. And basically what that means is I got on TikTok every morning. I uploaded a video saying, hey, these are my socks for the day, my motivational speech, and then showed everyone my socks. Surprisingly enough, I ended up having over 230 plus pair of socks. And trust me, the collection is still extensive. Now, the 230 pairs grows every single day, every single week, every single month. But I can tell you that one of the places that I ended up getting socks from was Chakra Wonders. When I went on their website, not only did I see that they had socks, but I also saw that they had artwork, mugs, hats, and even some books. It is such a great place to go to, especially if you're looking for something that is going to... What I love about Chakra Wonders is that it's an organization that provides products and accessories to those interested in astrology, metaphysics, and self-healing practices. Their mission is to build a resort-style facility structured around modern and advanced holistic and naturopathic therapies for physical and spiritual healing. When you make a purchase, you are helping them build a holistic sanctuary for wellness and renewal. Go to chakrawonders.com and use coupon code DEARTAY to receive 15% off your purchase. That is chakrawonders.com. Chakra Wonders is an organization that provides products and accessories to those interested in astrology, metaphysics, and self-healing practices. Their mission is to build a resort-style facility structured around modern and advanced holistic and naturopathic therapies for physical and spiritual healing. When you make a purchase, you are helping them build a holistic sanctuary for wellness and renewal. Go to chakrawonders.com and use coupon code DEARTAY to receive 15% off your purchase. That's CHAKRAWONDERS.com. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome back to Dear Tay, You Got This. I'm excited because we are getting back into our self-care program. Over the course of the next few weeks, of course, I will be intermittently putting in other podcast episodes that I have recorded. So definitely stay tuned. How did you all like last week's podcasts about life resets? I mean, it's very interesting to think about what your life would look like when you reset. But I think it's also very interesting to actually know what it is that you have to do and what you shouldn't do when you're going through a life reset. Resetting can already be hard. And when you kind of already know a little bit of the steps, like the do's and don'ts, it does make it a little bit easier to go through and be able to make the moves that you need to. So I'm excited that I'm happy that I was able to bring that to you guys and give you guys a little bit of insight. And just as I said in the podcast, it wasn't an extensive list. It was just 5 do's and don'ts that I felt were important for you to know when resetting your life. So I hope that you got some, oh my gosh, how did I lose my train of thought? I hope that you got some benefit from listening to that podcast. So as we move forward, I am going to be doing April 2023 accomplishments today. And I'm excited to get into the mid-year of 2023 because, as I stated, with not drinking and waking up early, it was hard. But then also with the breakup that I had in March, it really set me into a dark place. And being able to look back on it, not only now, but even before I did this series, I was like looking back on the accomplishments and the things that I had learned over the last year. And I was just like, wow, like I really learned some shit. And I'm excited to tell you all that because the one thing that I want you guys to understand, especially going through the self-care series, not only that it's important for you to have self-care, but also that it's important for you to do what your heart, your body sets out to do. I was just talking to someone and we were talking about choices. And I had read somewhere that basically any choice that you make, whether it is making a choice or whether it's not making a choice, is a choice. And I'm excited that I made a choice to change because it really has put me on a path of understanding. It has put me on a path of happiness and peace, which I'm not going to say that I never felt before, but I feel it so much more deeply now that it's almost like, why did I not do this earlier? And trust me, I tried. I did try to do this earlier. I did, think about what I wanted to do and the methods that I was going to put into place and all of this. But I think that 2023 was just the year where everything kind of snapped into place. And it was very interesting for me. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and go over the accomplishments and things that happened over the month of April in 2023. And then I'm going to go ahead and get you guys all set here. So, couple of things. First thing is here. There was still no drinking and I was still waking up at 6 a.m. Yes, it was hard, especially after the breakup. There were definitely days that I did not want to get out of bed, but I knew that I had a goal. I was still working on my business at the time. So I was still waking up at 6 a.m. My chakra alignment was still going. So by the time April started, I was about a week and a half, 2 weeks into my chakra alignment. I had met a lot of different people in Facebook groups and in the summit that I had done. And one of them, her name was Priya. She did AccuNet energy healing. And I did a session with her. And with that, you can choose the different routes you would like to go when it comes to energy healing. And I chose emotional because I was going through a really rough time. In that same month, I went through an emotional shutdown where I needed to give back to myself a lot. I was still going to NET therapy and really was trying to figure out what I needed to do. At this time, I had stopped journaling a little bit because I had so much going on in my brain. I couldn't actually sit down and write in the journal that I had. So April was kind of sparse when it came to journal entries. I had a friend come up and see me, somebody that I had started talking to. And we had an energy exchange between us that was definitely needed. And it wasn't just one-sided. It was something that both of us needed in that time. And she made me realize that not only was there a change needed, but while she was here, she was calling me a millionaire. Like it was the first time she had ever seen my house and she got here. And mind you, my house is not really all that big. Like it's a 2-story with basement, um, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, and it's not worth $1 million. Um, but when she came here, she was just like, wow, like your house is amazing. I have a beautiful backyard. My front yard is pretty long. And she was like, yeah, she was like, you're a millionaire. And I was like, I'm not a millionaire. So she was like, okay, a half a millionaire. So after having this energy exchange with her I think it was only for like a day. After having this energy exchange with her, um, it made me really think about the things that I have in life and what I want to continue doing. And one of them was I wanted to have a better paying job. I was still very not happy with my job. So I was like, well, let's go ahead and start doing something about that. So I started I put my resume back up on Indeed, and I applied to like a couple of places. But I didn't really put a whole bunch of effort into putting my resume out there. And one place actually found me. So what ended up happening was they reached out on August 6th, and by August 19th, I had a job. And I told them, like, they were on the outs with their last person. So I had told them, like, I understand that you guys want somebody in here quick, but I do want to put in my 2 weeks, and I want to at least put in a week before coming, because I was going through some emotional stuff, and they were like, yeah, no, not a problem. So by the time I got this job, which was basically mid-April, that Friday, I went ahead and put in my 2 weeks because I was good. I was like, I'm done. I then negotiated before I accepted the job. Of course, I negotiated my salary, which, by the way, I had never done before. And at this time, I was still meditating and keeping myself on track, which was really good considering the emotional state that I was in. And when I say like the emotional state that I was in, these were the times where I was going to work, and I was having moments where I just could not, it seemed like I just could not control myself. I would be sitting eating lunch, and then all of a sudden, like I would feel the emotions well up, the sadness and everything. And I'd go, all right, I gotta go take a break. And I would go cry. And I feel like I probably did this like a couple times a week. Um, up until like June. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, it really was like I would get up, I would do my TikToks in the morning, I would go to work, I would do good one day, the next day I would go to work and I would feel super emotional. So I would sit in my car and cry, or I would sit on lunch and go do stuff and I would cry. I remember one time I went into another part of the office just so that I could sit and cry. And I was like, I remember being so angry. And my coworker came in and she was like, hey, like, what's going on? And I was talking to her and like, I just like went off. And my boss walks in and he goes, is everything okay? And she goes, yeah, no, everything's good. And he was like, he was like concerned that I was mad at her. And she was like, no, no, this has nothing to do with me or us. And he was like, okay. And then he like backed out and like walked away. Like it was one of those. It was really interesting. But yeah, uh, April and May were very emotional for me. But the things that I want to focus on when it comes to April, especially with the accomplishments and the things that I realized like over the month of April, I want to focus on spiritual, community, and occupational self-care. So when it comes to these different types of self-care, um, it's very important to know exactly how they played a role. And I want to also let you guys know what it was that I was consciously doing at that time. Again, knowing that at the end of April was when I took my mental health first aid certification class. understanding that some of these were things that I was doing without knowing that I was doing them. All right. So in the spiritual realm, just like when I talked about in March, one of the things that I did was I was again in this aspect, I was meditating every day. And I really was trying to figure out what it was that I needed to do in my life and in my particular situation, because I was sad, because I was really disgruntled with my work. I really had to sit down and think about what it was that I was doing. And although through the spiritual aspect, like with the chakra alignment, I was going through each chakra. By the time April hit, by the time I got to where I was in April, I believe I was on my solar plexus chakra, which is about power. And in this whole thing, I was really just trying to get my power back because I had felt like I had lost so much through my relationship. I really needed to have a win, is really what happened. So every day, diligently, I was meditating. Now, of course, because I was getting up early, what I was doing was I was meditating first thing in the morning. Then I was doing my TikToks and putting those up. Those were my stock videos. And then I was relaxing for a little bit before work instead of really like getting up and rushing out. And this not only did a lot for me spiritually, but it also did a lot for me mentally, because I don't think that we realize the strain that we go through when we are getting up last minute, going to work, and then getting bogged down by work and not really having a chance to sit back and think about what it is that we are actually doing. So I say that to say that even now, like for the most part, I get up at 6 o'clock. Still, maybe sometimes depending on the day, I will get up at 5:30. On the weekends, I kind of just let my alarm go off and not set it. But I say all that to say is that even with my new job now, I get up at 6 a.m. I get up, I will probably record a podcast, or I will be getting a course together, or I will be working on my presentation. And then at 7:30, I will start getting things together around the house. And by 7:45, I'm out of here. And that really is the way that I maneuver my life now because of the situation that I had with my last job. I don't think that there's any way now that I would be able to get up 45 minutes before I have to leave my house. Like I can only imagine getting up at 6:45, getting ready, getting dressed, and then or 7 o'clock, and then deciding that I was going to leave my house. I really cannot imagine what that would look like. But to think that that has done so much for my emotional health and also my spiritual health really is something to think about. Now, I'm not telling everybody on the planet to get up at 6 a.m. because some of us would be so grouchy. And there are some days, like I've had some days where I would wake up and I would be grouchy. For the most part, if I get up and I walk around for like 10, 20 minutes, and like drink some water, maybe eat some breakfast, like I'm good to go. But sometimes there are days where I really just don't want to get up. I don't want to move. I don't want to do anything. So I will force myself to do so. And if it's on the weekend, I'll just lay in bed. I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. I will lay in bed. But I found that doing that really helped me to stay on track. It helped me to still get my meditation in, because at the time I was working at a job where sometimes I didn't get off till 7:30. I would come home, I would have to relax, which didn't seem like a lot of time because basically I was waking up the next day to just go to work. So waking up early gave me a little bit of time to actually work on the things that I wanted to work on. And then after that, go to work and get the stuff done at work. So when I came home, I felt like I didn't have to do anything else. And when it came to spiritual self-care, although I had not really like planned this per se in this is going to be my self-care routine, it had become my self-care routine. And I think that's very important to know, especially when I'm telling you guys, like,
understand where you want to start, which area of self-care you need a little bit of time, and a little bit more care, and really sit down and plan what that self-care in that place looks like. So for the spiritual part, I did not plan that part. I kind of just went with it and it actually happened to work. So very, very happy for the fact that I could meditate and be great. Then the next area of self-care was community. And as I stated before, community is the friends, family, and the people that you interact with for fun activities. And in this particular situation, it just so happened to be the friend who came up to help me out. She knew exactly what was going on in my life. And she kind of was just like, well, let me come see you since you've come to see me. And I was like, all right, cool. And she came to visit. Now, this again was not planned self-care. I would say it kind of was, because in this moment, she kind of was just like, hey, like, I'll be free this weekend, or I'll be free these couple of days. Like, how do you feel about that? And I was like, you know what? That would be perfect. I'm going to take off Wednesday so that I can spend the day with you. I have an appointment that day, so we'll go to that. And then after that, we'll just hang out, whatever, whatever. And she was like, okay, cool. Um, and when she came up, like she took care of everything. Like she made breakfast, she made dinner. Um, and it was so very nice, to not have to think about anything. And she knew that I was going through a breakup, so she was kind of there for that and kind of just like, talking with me about that. But I realized that this community self-care was so important when she was here, because in that moment, like I realized that she was somebody who I could like have conversations with, and somebody that I could really open up to. And her the same. And it was very, very, very nice. And this was when I started to really look at the community that I had and what it was that I wanted out of my community. So I did have my best friends who I talked to every Thursday. And, we would talk and shoot the shit about everything. But there were just times where I didn't want to talk about what was going on in my life because I was so sad, because it felt like I was basically going over the same thing over and over and over again, and it wasn't helping. So it was nice to have a new ear, somebody with a new perspective come in, listen, and give me some insight, basically. Um, and that was super cool. And I really enjoyed the fact that while she was up here, like when I went to my appointment, she was like, I'll go with you. And I was like, oh, okay. So she like came up, she sat in the car and waited for me. And then we came back home and went out to dinner. And in all honesty, like it was really, really nice. But I think one of the things that we miss out on when it comes to community self-care is we forget that we have people in our lives who care about us, who want to help us through the things that we're going through. And a lot of times we're not giving them the ability to do so, whether it be because we're too tired and we don't want them to come around, or we're too sad and we don't want them to come around, or we don't want to talk to them about the shit that we're going through because we've already talked it to death. Um, I saw something the other day that basically said that when we refuse somebody's ability to help us, we are refusing them the same emotion that we feel when we help them. And I thought that was amazing, because I am one of those people who don't like to ask for help. And what I will do is I will sit and I will put myself in a little box, AKA my home, and I won't talk to people, or I will talk to people, but not about the stuff that matters. And I will just put that stuff on the back burner because I feel like people don't want to hear it, or they don't know how to help me, or whatever the situation may be. It's one of those things where I'm like, all right, well, this person is too busy with their life. I don't want to bug them with the things that I'm going through. And I think over the time that I was going through this breakup, I really got out of that. There are still some things where there are still some things that I'll keep to myself, some things that I won't like tell other people if I'm going through something. Um, and I will say that over the last year and a half, at this point, it's very rare that I'm going through something now because I am like preemptively working on myself. I'm preemptively working on my situation, keeping my happiness. And does that mean that shit doesn't happen? No, that means that sometimes shit does fall apart and I get overwhelmed and I will sit back and, think about all the things that I did wrong. And then I'll have to go to somebody and they'll be like, Tay, you're fine. Like, it's okay to be overwhelmed because that is something that happens, but you're not messing up. You're not doing anything wrong. Like, we're human, humans err. Like, it's fine. And I think that having a community that is able to be there for you in those times and really help you work through the things that you're going through is super important. And that's what this friend was for me at the time. Again, knowing that I still had my other friends, it was nice to have a different perspective because she had gone through the same kind of healing. She had gone through the same type of um, self-care, if you will. She had gone through really understanding who she was and what she wanted in life and where she wanted to go and what was going to bring her happiness and all of that, that I felt comfortable coming to her and bringing these issues to her. The problems that I was going through, the emotional heartache that I was going through. Like, I felt very comfortable bringing that to her, knowing that she was going to be able to give me a different perspective. And not only that, but I was also still going to my NET therapist, which is the appointment that she went with me to. And it was very nice to sit back and talk with her about what was going on and why I felt out of place and why I felt like I couldn't love myself anymore and things like that. Like, being able to talk to somebody else who wasn't going to judge me, who had been through the same things, who knew what it was like to drop everything to change and other people weren't changing around them, to be able to do that and talk to people who actually had done that was absolutely amazing. And sometimes within this, it felt like I was the only person going through this. And in my world, I was like, I was talking to people who had already gone through it or people who hadn't yet reached that point. And I was just like, this sucks. It was not a happy time for me. It was very emotional. It was very sad. I can't say that I was depressed, but the way that things were looking, it seemed like I was depressed. I just didn't know what to do or how to get myself out of it. And being able to talk to people who had gotten themselves out of it or who had went to therapy and had been able to talk it through and really work on themselves. That was amazing to me. And I was super excited about having people in my life who did those things. And as time went on, I'm thankful for those people. Like, I still have my NET therapist. I am no longer friends with the friend that I'm actually going to be talking about um, for reasons of my own. Look, for my own things, we are no longer friends. But I appreciate everything that she taught me within that time. And these are the times where I would tell you, like, not everybody is meant for the long haul in relationships, friendships, anything like that. Some people are just there for a season. And in this particular situation, I hope that later um, we can, still talk because she has been a big influence on my life over for a good 10-month span. She was a big influence on my life, and I hope that eventually we can reconvene and come back as friends. But if it doesn't happen, I understand, again, understanding that some people are there for seasons and some people are there for the long haul. This is probably one of those situations where she was not meant to be here for a long time. She was meant to help me through that and help me to understand and make me realize some things about myself. So if it happens, great. If not, great. Um, but I'm going to continue with my happiness and what I'm doing right now. And not going to worry about, the past, if you will. So that is the community piece. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, the last area of self-care I want to talk about is occupational. And this was definitely important because I think that it should be said that no, I was not looking for another job. That is not technically how all me changing my job actually happened. With the fact that I was so unhappy at my last job because of all of the things that were going on, I really just decided that it was time to go and that I needed to make more money to feel more comfortable. I wanted a job where I didn't feel like I was always working. With this job, I felt like I was always working. Um, and mind you, my schedule was from 8:30 to 5, but I was in there until 6, 7, sometimes 8 o'clock doing work. Um, and it got to the point where it was just so daunting. And once all this stuff happened, once I started like waking up early and doing all this stuff, like I started realizing like, okay, I need to step back a little bit. So I did start bringing it back and start going home at a decent time. But at the same time, it was almost like I just really I couldn't let, like, ends weren't meeting when it came to bills and things like that. So it was super, super just daunting, honestly. It was a mess and a half. So I thought to myself, like, this is kind of ridiculous. And I was like, all right, let's figure out what we need to do. Now, I want to remind you all that once I started my chakra alignment and really got down to like the root chakra and understanding like what it was that was causing my foundation to be unstable, my first thing was to rock that shit and change it. And that was going to be a big move, especially since I had been at this job for 3 years at this point. And I knew just about everything that you needed to do at this. I was working the QuickBooks side. I had been promoted to office manager. Like, I was doing everything, but it was so much. And at the beginning of the year, when I stopped drinking, things started to like I started to look at things a little bit differently. And that was because my anger subsided, my mood changed, like my emotional health started to become better. Of course, up until the breakup. And once it started to become better and I stopped looking at everything that was wrong with this place, I started looking at what it was that I wanted. So instead of saying, okay, I want to change the outside circumstances, what I had to do is I had to change my circumstances. Like, I had to look at what it was that I needed to change in order for my situation to be better. And I realized that my occupational health was not in a great place. Like I said, I put my resume up on Indeed, right after me and my friend had a conversation, about me being a millionaire. At that time, I was also looking at like what it was that I could do with my business to help bring in more cash flow and things like that. But I knew that in order for me to like get out of my brain, to get out of my head about, where I was at and be able to put forth more effort into my business, I had to get out of this situation that I was in. So what I did was I put my resume up on Indeed. I did not really apply to a whole lot of jobs. I think I may have applied to one or two. And then I left it at that because I was just like, I wasn't actively looking, but I definitely was like, there has to be a place where I can have peace, where I can work from 8:30 to 5 or 9 to 5. And then when I get off of work, I am off of work. I wanted to make more money. I wanted the environment to be where people were actually doing their work and someplace that wasn't, of course, the same way, wasn't micromanaged. I had the freedom to do what I needed to do and go from there, like, being treated like an adult, things like that. Like, these are things that I had at my other job. The only thing that I didn't have was that work-life harmony that I was searching for. So I was like, all right, let's go ahead and look for that. What does that look like, right? So I put my resume up, and then within a couple of days of me putting up my resume, I got a phone call. And within that phone call, they were like, "Yeah, we're looking for somebody. Would love to do an interview." Actually, it wasn't a phone call. It was an email, and they were like, "Hey, we're interested in you. This, that, and the other. Blah blah blah. Like, would love to do a Zoom interview." And I was like, "Sure." So I scheduled the Zoom interview, and the Zoom interview went over really, really well. And here's the thing: when it comes down to one, and I know that this is not a how to get your next job 101, right? But what I want to tell you is that one of the things that I do that I'm sure that some people do or most people will do, but one thing that I've done over the last, how long has it been since I worked at the other place? So 6 years. Over the last 6 or 7 years, one of the things that I've always done when it comes to interviewing for a job, and actually it's longer than that, like 10 years, is as soon as I know that I'm going to be interviewing for a job, I will go and not only research the company, but I will also research how to interview. Because let's just be real, I am usually getting a new job every 2 to 3 years. I say usually because that's been the track record since getting my adult job. Every 2 to 3 years, I will get bored or the place isn't fulfilling something, and I will leave. And one of the things that I will do is I will start looking up, should I quit my job? How to interview, how to answer certain interview questions, things like that. And I always do this before I go into an interview, because I know that they're going to ask, what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? Why did you leave your last job? Things like that. I know that they're going to ask these questions. And I feel like there, when you talk to somebody who's in HR, and anybody in HR can go ahead and correct me, there is a correct way, quote unquote, a correct way to interview. And then there's a wrong way to interview. And the one thing that I don't want to do is, I know that I'm a good worker. I know that I'm a hard worker, and I know that I catch on really fast depending on what it is. And the last thing I want to do is go into this interview feeling incompetent, or like I can't answer certain questions. So I always go and I check up and I check in to see, like, all right, what's changed over the last 3 years that I've interviewed that I need to go ahead and answer these questions, right? And so I do that. I go to this first interview, we talk. I tell her what I'm looking for, salary wise. She doesn't really blink an eye on that. And then we talk about like some of the other things. And when she got on the call, she was very much like, I understand that you're not looking right now, but that you're, basically entertaining the idea. And I was like, absolutely. And, kind of going over my experience and things like that. And then we got off the call, and I felt pretty good about it. And she emailed me later and was like, hey, the attorney would really like to meet you, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Can we set something up? Yada, yada, yada. So I was like, yeah, sure. So we set something up. I go in for that interview. And when I go to this place, it was different because it's a small firm, and the place looks like a house. You go into the parking lot, and there's a garden in the back. And I walk into this place, and they have their daughter there, and we're like talking and things like that, and going over a little bit more things. And of course, this was just so that the attorney could have a feel for me and meet me. And I get in there, we're talking, and before the end of the interview, the attorney goes, so what is it that we can do to get you here? And it was literally like, this was like a week and a half process. And there was literally like, it was almost like I walked into this place and it was my place. Like, I just knew that this was where I wanted to be. After talking to them about all the things, salary, benefits, all of that stuff. And then not only that, but understanding that what I really wanted at that time was to be able to go into work, do my work, get off work, and be off work. I wanted that peace. I wanted that work-life harmony. Um, and because that was something that they were striving for and looking for and wanting to do, they were like, yeah, no, we got this. And then I left, and I'm gonna say I honestly believe that him asking me like what it was going to take for me to leave was them offering me the position. Um, and then after that we talked a little bit more because there were some other things, some other benefits and things like that that I was looking into that I really wanted, um, that we had to work out. But eventually I went ahead and accepted the job. And when it comes to occupational self-care, because I know that we talked about that before, um, it is about your job or the work that you do, taking time off, um, having good morale, things like that. And I was looking for that. I was looking for a healthy occupational workspace. I was looking for something that I wouldn't be overwhelmed with. And I ended up finding it. And I always, always, always attribute my want to find something new to not only my restlessness, but also to my chakra alignment. Every single time I do a chakra alignment, something changes. Every single time. All right. 2023 was not the first time. In 2000, end of 2018, going into 2019, shit changed. 2022, a lot of shit changed. 2023, shit changed. Like I even this year have gone through the chakra alignment again, and things changed again. Like things were moving. And it's not always in the same area because in some areas I'm still very happy. But in some other areas, I wanted to like have more. I wanted it to be more. And that's what the chakra alignment does for me. It's not always about healing. It is about understanding where you are, feeling in your body, knowing that energetically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically, you are in the right place. And this is one of the reasons why I do it. What seems to be every spring, um, because it's almost like I'm cleaning house. And so very happy that when it came into April, that these were the areas of self-care that I was working on because I had been in such a down and out place. So when it comes to this week and your self-care, and you're looking at all of the areas, not just these three, but I encourage you to look at these three: the spiritual, the community, the occupational self-care. And I want you to look at these three areas and see what it is about these things that you can change. I will tell you before I go and give you my Trinity. One thing that I realized too, like I want you to look at your life and think about all of the patterns that you have before something changes. There is always like a tell that something is about to be different. And I say this because I was just going through a workbook and it was talking about coincidences and patterns and things like that of like how things happen in your life. And there are a few things, there were a few coincidences in getting my new job that happened that I was not aware of, that things were working in the background when I started really realizing that I needed to make a change, like an overall change. And I didn't know those things until later, that things were working in the background. But look at all of the signs and the coincidences and the patterns that happen when you start to become restless with your life. One of the things, since I have spent quite a bit of time on occupational self-care, one of the things that I noticed about myself, and I've done this for, I don't even know how, I will have to look it up and see when this movie came out. But if you've ever seen Devil Wears Prada, one of the things that I realized about myself in life is that I have an emotional connection to a lot of different things, to music, to movies, to anything. And what ends up happening is when I'm going through a rough time in life, depending on what it is, I will fall back into the same pattern. So when I'm angry, I will go and listen to Eminem because in my brain, since I was a teenager, there is nothing worse than what he talks about in his music, right? My life is not that bad. And I literally fall back on that every single time. Like when I'm angry, I'm like, okay, we're gonna put on some Eminem. We're gonna put on some hardcore like rock. We're gonna do something to get out of this mood. And Eminem is just my, my quote unquote drug of choice. When I'm angry, I will turn on Eminem and I will sit and I will sing and I will clean. And it brings me back to center. Same thing with work. If work is getting to me and I'm just like, I cannot stand this place and I'm on my way to moving out, I know that I'm not on my way to moving out if I'm just looking. All right. If I'm just looking up little videos on how to make like the workplace better or things like that, like I know that I'm not ready to move. But I know that I'm ready to move as soon as I put in Devil Wears Prada. Because if you've seen the movie, you have Meryl Streep, um, who is head of a magazine, and Anne Hathaway comes in as her assistant, and she's treated like absolute crap up until she like does something and all of a sudden Meryl Streep character remembers her name and gives her more responsibilities and things like that. And it's a really nice movie. And actually, I feel like I should go watch it again just because, not because I'm ready to move out of my job. Um, but when I start watching that movie is when I know that I am really over my job. Like I am over it. Because it's such a great story of a girl who goes into a career that she believes will help push her forward. And although she's there for a blip, uh, it ends up being the greatest thing that she had ever done because she was able to find herself. She was able to stand up for herself. She was able to do all of these things that she didn't think that she could. And it eventually landed her the job that she absolutely wanted. Um, and I look at that movie, and when I'm in that emotional state and that restlessness of I'm ready to go, one of the things that I do is I sit and I watch that movie because what it does is it makes me realize like how much better I am at my job and how maybe I need to change something. Maybe I'm not doing something right. And then when it gets to the point where no, I'm doing the right things, then I'm like, all right, it might be time to go. It might be time to throw the cell phone away and leave the premises. And that's what I think about. So this week, when it comes down to your self-care plan, what I'd like you to do is go ahead, look at these 3 areas of self-care, and I want you to pick one and I want you to plan it within the next week or so. And then what I also want you to do is take a little bit of time and think about the patterns in your life that continue to happen, whether it be in relationships, whether it's your home life, whether it's work life, the same patterns that keep coming up that make you realize that you're restless or that you need a change or that something's got to give. And think about what those things are. And then as you think about what those things are, start putting together an action plan. So if something needs to change at work, whether it be, you're like, well, it's time for me to go ask for a raise, put that on your to-do list. Start researching how you ask for a raise. You know, if it comes down to your relationships, think about what it is that you'd like to change in your relationships. Do you need to go on more date nights? Do you guys need to have a check-in? Do you not have a partner right now? So you're like, okay, well, how do I, look at a partner when I'm not even like, when I feel like I'm not together. So look at the things that you feel aren't together in your life and start getting them together. Make a list. And then work this list slowly. This is not something that, again, this is a journey. It's not a marathon. We're not trying to get there before anybody else. We're not doing any of that, right? It's not a race. We want to get there, but the speed at which we get there is determined by the actions that we take and how consistent we are with them. And if you have a list of them, you would be more apt to actually do them. And if that's not the way that you work, whatever way that you work, put it in your phone, put it as an alarm, set it as a meeting, whatever you need to do to make sure that you are taking action on these things, not only the self-care, but also on the things that you want to change in your life. Just make sure that you're doing that. All right. Now, of course, like we end every episode of Dear Tay, You Got This, I do have my Trinity for this week. And I actually wrote them down because when I do film these early, I want to make sure that I'm talking about all of the things that I want to brag about, all of the things that I have gratitude for, and then all of the desires that I have. So for this week, as I'm recording this, my brag. So I will tell you guys that one of the things that I'm not really big on is like I'm getting into this space where I don't want to do content creation anymore. I'm getting into this space where I'm like, okay, how can I continue to keep you guys entertained and engaged? And then also still give you guys the tips that you guys are looking for and make sure that this is something that you actually want to listen to, right? Like I'm clearly made this podcast for me. So like if people don't like it, then people don't like it. It's not like I'm going to, fall over and cry because really I'm doing this for myself. This is a record of what I went through and how I got through a very tumultuous time in my life. And also how that healing pushed me towards creating this podcast and the things that I'm doing. So, with that being said, one of the things that I am excited about and really want to brag about is the fact that I have an email list. And if you are not on this email list, you should probably get on this email list. But I wanted to brag about how my open rate of my emails is around 40%. Which is really, really freaking good. I did a coaching program a little while back, and in that coaching program, one of the things that they were talking about was having an open rate of like 20%, I think. So to know that mine is double that is really good. And to think I wanted to like change things up because I thought like maybe people aren't doing things, maybe people aren't seeing them or whatever. And like, no, 40% of people who I am sending these to on my little email list, of like, I think there's only like 110 people on this email list. My open rate is 40%, or I should say upwards of 40%, which is fucking amazing. It's amazing. And I wanted to brag about that because I don't feel like I look at a lot of my stats all the time. I don't. And it's mostly because again, I'm doing this for me. So it's like I'm not really looking at like what my stats are and what these things are and stuff like that. I'm really not paying attention to that. But it's important to know like where I'm at, especially as I do my email marketing and send out emails weekly and things like that, like what that looks like, right? So that's my brag for the week. My gratitude. I am grateful to be able to afford waterproofing for my basement. So I don't think that I told you guys on any of the previous podcasts, but I started recording my podcast downstairs in the basement because the rest of my house is not carpeted. It is all wood flooring. So everything kind of just like bounces and echoes everywhere. So I decided that I was going to start doing the recordings in my basement because it is a finished part of the basement. It is relatively soundless, if you will. And there's no carpet down, or there's carpet down there. So the sound doesn't just like bounce off the walls and things like that. And while I was down there, I started realizing that I was having an allergic reaction to something in my home. And I only knew that it was in my home because when I would leave my home, I'd be fine. But then when I come back, I would not be fine. So I was trying to figure out like what it was and what was going on. And it come to find out there was mold and mildew growing in my basement. And I was just breathing all of that shit in. So I had somebody come out and check for the waterproofing aspect to see if we could like get that situated because I really want to be able to use my basement. Like I haven't used my basement since my ex-husband left, really. And that was 4 years ago. Um, so almost 5 years ago at this point. And I was trying to figure out, I didn't know how much it was going to cost or anything like that. And I was just like, okay, what am I going to do if they come back and say like it's so much money? But come to find out through financing and things like that, I got a really good payment, so I'm able to afford it, which is nice. Um, and there's also all the perks that comes with it, like, it's going to help with the value of my home, and I'll be able to use my basement now. I'll be able to use my full house, and not just the upstairs and my bedroom, basically. So like I said earlier in this podcast, my house is pretty big. So it's like really trying to figure out how to utilize all of the spaces in my house, and that's one of the ways, right? And then last but not least, my desire. I have a desire uh, to have abundance in all things, and that's in wealth, in relationships, in my work life, in everything. Excuse me. Um, and that also includes in happiness, um, literally in everything. And with that, I really just want an overall overflow of happiness and joy and excitement. Because what is a life without any of that stuff? Like in real life, like as I sit here and think about like the peace and the happiness that I've created for myself and what that looks like. I want that in all areas of my life, not just my home life, right? I want that in my relationships. I want that at work. Um, and I realize that every single day I'm doing exactly what I need to be able to do that. And that is super exciting for me. Um, and I think that when it comes down to it, I know for sure that abundance is something that is highly sought after. And I think sometimes we forget that it's already there. Um, and I think that that's so important to remember as we move through life and work on our self-care and work on the areas in our life that we are just not super excited about or super happy about. Really working on that stuff and understanding like you can have it all. You can have everything that you've ever wanted. It really is about knowing what it is that you want and understanding yourself and how to get it. So I hope that this podcast episode has been helpful to you. I am, as always, very excited to bring you the self-care series. So I hope that you all are enjoying this. And please remember that if you want to share your Trinity or if you want to share any wins that you have going on in your life, to go ahead and leave a comment on the podcast, or you can text my text line at 330-552-7234. Or you can call the number and leave a message, and I will share your wins and your Trinity on the podcast. Until next week, I will talk to you guys later.